What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you've been following along, you know this is part 2 on how to LS swap your Crown Victoria. Obviously, ours is wrapped in a Dodge Coronet body. However, everything underneath is 03 Ford Crown Victoria. So if you happen to be doing this swap, the vast majority of the stuff is going to be exactly the same. So I've got a little bit of talking to do to try to quickly cover some stuff that I've been working on over the last month. I do apologize for all the talking. However, I'll try to keep it quick, and then we can get on to some more exciting stuff, like actually working on installing some new parts. And yeah, we'll get moving on this. All right, so you saw in the last video, we have the 6-liter and 4L80E all bolted into the car. We got the engine mounts fitted up. We've got the transmission crossmember modified, so it's bolted in for the final time. So over the last month, I've just been spending a lot of time finalizing a lot of little details and stuff that's not very exciting. However, it is necessary to make a running and driving car. So it's going to be kind of jumping around, so let's just get into it. We are obviously keeping heat and AC on the car, so we have the heater hoses here. They are 3/4 inch heater hose. This one here, you do have to adapt down to 5/8 where it goes into the LS water pump housing. So there's an adapter in there. I have to get a couple clamps, and then that job will be done. We did get a new AC compressor. I got a good deal on that from eBay, so I've got that bolted in. We've got our AC lines hooked up. In the previous video, I showed how we did those. We have our serpentine belt all installed. It is all stock truck accessory stuff. Didn't have to change anything there. I'm still right in the process of figuring out radiator hoses. I figured out what I need. I just have to buy a couple of adapters. The top one is super simple. The bottom one took a little bit more figuring. However, it's also not complicated. We have our power steering lines done. It's going to be a little tough to see. I'll see if I can stick you guys down in there. Yeah, so if you see right down in there, there is a company called Range Industries, and they make a complete kit that converts your AN lines over to AN. Power steering lines over to AN, and designed specifically to go from the Crown Victoria rack up to an LS. It comes with a nice little billet block that bolts onto the rack, a pre-crimped line, your feed line that runs up to the pump, and return hoses as well. Right here, we are running the stock power steering line cooler in the radiator stack. So these go to that, and then one goes the return back to the pump. So that's a kit you can buy, all done. You don't have to do anything custom there. We are also running the transmission cooler, the stock cooler that is in the stack there. And my goal has been to try to reuse as much stuff as I can, at least for the most part. So we are running the stock transmission cooler lines. I'll climb under the car in the back and show you how they hook up to the 4L80. So yeah, that's kind of the main things up here. Obviously with the HD stuff bolted in place, everything gets a little tight, but I think it is going to clear. We obviously have a little less room up front than a stock Crown Victoria does, which makes my job a little harder, but it's coming along. Up top, I don't remember if I've mentioned before, but we are running a Trailblazer SS intake. A little better flowing, make a little bit more horsepower than the stock truck intake, and also looks a little better. We are running a Snake Eater Performance 92mm throttle body. I modified the Crown Victoria throttle cable bracket and added another little leg here, and that bolts up perfectly. Stock throttle cable is absolutely perfect for this. The barrel is the right size that fits in there. It's the right length. And if you're running cruise, the cruise cable also runs over here. You can hook it right into this side here, and it hooks in perfectly right there. So pretty simple as far as that goes. All right, let me quickly climb under the car, show you a couple things, and then we are going to get to work. All right, so it's a little dark in here, but I'll try to show you as best as I can. Here you can see where we've got the Speed Engineering headers that come down here. I welded some 3-inch V-bands to the ends of those. I had a pair of 3-inch race bullet mufflers that we had kind of half installed back before we did the engine swap. So I just put those in, did some adapting down to the stock Crown Vic exhaust. It does have a stock, the P71, a dual, it's about 2 1/4 inch exhaust with an H pipe in it. So we've got that back there. And so for the time being, that's what we're going to run. We do have cutouts. Here is the other piece that goes in right there. We did have to weld an extension onto the header on this side to get stuff to line up. We've got our shift linkage installed there. I'll go back inside and I'll show you what shifter we're using. And we did have to do a little more modifying to the cross member to get that to clear. So anyway, transmission lines. Don't mind my grunting around here. Let's see if we can see them, kind of. All right, so here is the stock transmission lines. There are hard lines that run, snake up in between the engine and the cross member there. They run right here. And then, as you can see, they go to rubber line there, run back. Sorry, it's going to be really hard to see up in there. And there's the back one, and then the one up in there. So we are, so that's what we got. Let me get back up top. That way I can actually talk, and I'll explain how I did those. All right, so the stock 4L80 has their quick connect fittings that go into the side of the transmission, and then they use little metal clips to hold the fittings in. And so what I used were fittings that were 90 degree that had the stock flare at one end, the quick connect fittings, so you could just fit it in, fit the new clips back in, and then it converted to a rubber hose with some crimp fittings on the other end. Sorry if that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But yeah, it was not really complicated. 2 little 90 degree fittings off the transmission, and then the high pressure rubber hose running from those down to the hard lines. And then that was all good there. Nothing fancy, but it should work fine. All right, so as far as shifter goes, I initially tried to make the stock column shift work. However, with the pattern of the 4L80E and the 4R70W are different. The 4L80 has an extra position in it, and so I did some modifying and a fair bit of work to try to get the column shift to work, but I could not get it to go all the way down into first. So, I mean, if you don't care about that, you could put it in drive and, you know, down to third and second, and it worked, you know, half decently, but I wasn't quite happy with that. So what we are running is this. It is a Art Car / Winters, their Sidewinder shifter. It's used a lot in like off-road and desert racing applications. I got this one off my brother, and I think it should work fine. So it's pretty simple, really. You have your park here, and then reverse, and then neutral, 4, 3, 2, 1. So there's not a lot of extra space with the Explorer center console that we're running. Was not willing to get rid of our cup holders. Got to have cup holders in this. So stuff does get a little tight. And that's the reason we had to kind of angle the shifter up, because with the throw being as long as it is, well, by the time you get it all the way into park, there's not much extra room to the dash. So I made some custom little, you can't see them very well, they're all black, little brackets here that bolt this in, some metal plates underneath the center console that bolt through those, and then now it's nice and sturdy. So I think it looks cool. gives it a little bit of a race look, and I think it should work really nicely for the street as well. All right, so what we have laid out here is a complete engine controller kit from BP Automotive. It includes a standalone harness, a ECU that you can get tuned depending on what your setup is, a mounting bracket for it, 2 O2 sensors, a MAF sensor, a torque converter lockup switch that'll go on the brake pedal, a bracket for mounting the fuse block, and then excellent directions as well. And so it's basically a one-stop shop to get your whole setup ready to go. Obviously, there's a lot of different options that you can go with for standalone harnesses and for computers. You can go aftermarket with something like a Holley, but I decided for my setup currently is simple enough, and I want to retain stock gauges, which hopefully I should be able to do with the wires that are here. It keeps it all simple. It's a pretty affordable package. It's made here in the US, and so everything is excellent quality. All right, so we are going to start by laying out the harness. I am mounting the ECU underneath the dash, which means that the harness needs to be fed from the inside of the car out. And so I drilled go inside and show you. Underneath the dash here. Super dark, but I drilled a 2 1/8 inch hole. I found a clear spot on the firewall. It is behind where the stock, if you can see it, the stock Ford ECU mounts. And show you, I ended up pulling the inner fender wheel and the inner fender out so I could better get the stuff. And it is right there underneath the heater box. I think should provide us a nice clear spot. So I'm going to go inside the car, take my harness and start feeding it out through that hole there. All right, so that took a bit of time, but we got the harness fished through the firewall. You can see the inner part of it here. Shot the light down in here. And it went through, I can almost see, right up through there. So now, you can see, comes out right down there, and we've got a whole bunch of wires. Whole bunch here. If you have not done an engine swap or an LS swap before, this may look a little intimidating. There's a lot of wires and a lot of connectors. However, promise it's not actually that scary. Everything is labeled really nicely. And some grounds. So it's really not that bad. So we just have to kind of figure out how we lay it out. And then I'll probably start plugging some stuff in. That way I know how it lays. Hopefully a lot of this we can hide under the intake. In the past, that's what I've done. So hopefully it should turn out okay. This just has the corrugated loom like this. You can spend an extra $100 and get a nice split loom. So if you're building a show car, or if you care too much, there is that option. But this is a daily driver, so it's plenty good for what we're doing here. All right, so now that we've got the harness fed through the firewall and kind of roughly starting to lay it out where we want, I am back inside the car trying to figure out where to mount the ECU. I figured there'd be a little more room than there is, so it's taken me a little bit of time to figure out, but I think we've got a spot picked out. So I've got the, we no longer have the airbag in it, so I just have a cover over here. So inside the dash, back up in there, it's kind of hard to tell, but I've got the ECU mounting bracket sitting there flat. This part's going to be just a little bit different than a standard Crown Victoria, just with the shape of the cornet body up in there. So if you're doing this on your own, you may have to do this a little differently. The other option is obviously just mount it in the engine bay, but I'm trying to keep it as dry and protected as possible. So this is where I've decided on. I found a couple of existing holes, one and to the left there. You can't see it all, but one behind it. And then there's one right here in the front. And find it here. I whipped up this very simple little bracket, a couple of holes in it, and it goes about in like that. It just supports this corner. And then I put an extra little hole right there to, there's a wiring harness there that got a little retainer there that I'll pop into that. And then that should be figured out, I think. We've got made sure we have room for our connectors to connect. All right, taking a quick little break from wiring, I ran to the junkyard yesterday and picked up a couple things. One being a transmission yoke, 4L80 yoke. Picked it up in the junkyard for cheap. And what you are going to do to adapt it to your stock drive shaft. Mine is obviously longer, seeing as how the chassis is lengthened. However, your stock drive shaft is going to work fine in this application. If you've got a P71, you probably got an aluminum one. If it's a civilian Crown Vic, you probably also got a steel one. So what you're going to need, the 4L80 yoke is a 1350 series, and the Crown Vic drive shaft, at least mine, I think most of them are the same, is a 1330. So you just need a 1350 to 1330 conversion U-joint. Find the box here. This is a Neepco, and there is the part number 2-3050 for that. So yeah, that's all you're going to need to put this in the car. So I'm going to go ahead and work on getting this bolted in. All right, well, it looks like I spoke a little too quick. I went to test fit the drive shaft, and it is just a little bit too long. With the yoke bottomed out in the transmission, which it goes all the way to about there, it does not quite go in. So if you're buying a yoke, probably buy a little bit shorter one. It's not much too long, just a little bit. Let me get a measurement here. So it is just under 6 inches from the end to there. So probably getting one, maybe a 4 or 5 inch one if you're buying one. I think what I'm going to do, I'm just going to cut a bit of this off because there's plenty of slip there. And yeah, so we'll just trim that off. We'll bevel the edge again and then do another test fit. All right, so I ended up getting the drive shaft trimmed. We cut about 1 inch off of it. So now the drive shaft fits great, and we have about 3/4 of an inch of slip into the transmission. So it should be all good there. So I've just kind of been slowly bouncing around, working on different stuff. Let me hop back inside the car. We got the ECU mounted right there. We made a little bracket and got the fuse panel mounted there. That's the fuse panel for the harness. It's easily accessible, just like that. I've been working on running some of the wiring over to the gauge cluster for the speedometer. We'll probably be adding a tach because this does not have a tach factory. Some of the wiring under the dash for the OBD2 port, and there is a switch that controls the torque converter lockup, which is the switch here. I'll go over in the next video how we are wiring that up. I have been working on a number of things under the hood. We got spark plug wires. Those came in today, so I got those put on. And I've just been working on figuring out some other wiring stuff like fans. So in the next video I'll probably go over more of that. We have our couplers for the radiator. Yeah, just kind of bouncing around on a number of things. We've got some wiring to figure out for our electric fans. But I have a feeling this video is already going to be plenty long. So I'm going to wrap it up with that. I know videos are slow in coming right now, but I'll keep doing my best to come out with ones as I make progress. So as always, guys, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. I will see you in the next video.